Welcome back. I'm Tim. No, I'm not Tim. I'm Speed at the bottom of the helix. Our next clinician started model railroading at the age of 12. And unlike us, who was convinced by our dads to join, he convinced his dad to join. He's a member of the Wisconsin and Michigan Model Railroad Club, as well as River Rail out of La Crosse, Wisconsin, right?
Mm-hmm.
At any given time, he has 5 projects going from I feel brain dead tonight to I can conquer the world. We welcome Tim Oudenhoven.
Thank you much, Speed. Appreciate it. Good to be with you today. So today, the plan is we're doing a 2-part clinic, as we discussed, and it's really going to be scratch building a car the modern way. And I'm doing that in quotes, of course, but it's using some of the computer-aided technology that's available these days, mainly cutting styrene with a Cricut cutter and then 3D printer. And so first off, though, just a little bit about what we're doing. I've been doing 3 scratch building cars for about 6-7 years now. And I started by doing it just with a Cricut cutter. I was so excited to get my first Cricut cutter. And I used to make cars completely out of Cricut cut styrene. So here is a coal car that I made from Wisconsin Public Service coal train. It's completely styrene Cricut cut parts in every regard. This is not 3D printed in any way. I also made these HMA ore cars for Algoma Central. Again, completely 3D Cricut cut, even the handrails, everything. All 3D, all Cricut cut, and I made the SSAM Wisconsin Central rebuilds for that, for their ballast train. So this is about 36 Cricut cut parts I made as a puzzle, if you will. And so it's possible to make cars completely out of styrene, as people have been doing for a long time. But as I started seeing the limitations of the technology of just using styrene, I wanted to start going a little bit farther. And what I developed is a hybrid. And so right here, here's one of my LS&I Husky ores, also for GVW. The red parts are 3D printed, and the white is Cricut cut styrene. And you can see I made a Cricut cut styrene box. The slope sheets are Cricut cut, but then the bottom bolster is 3D printed, and all the rails are 3D printed, which gives you that nice 3D effect on the rails. Now, what you don't get doing this type of car building is like rivet detail. I mean, I can't put the slope sheet rivets in easily. I mean, I could do archer transfers or something. But the nice thing is this car literally is costing me about 30 cents worth of plastic to produce. And they're extremely strong, extremely rigid, very, very easy to put together. And with this kind of technology, you basically get a car that looks like this, which at a 6-foot distance is maybe even hard to tell that it's been done so easily, so quickly. And from there, I've been building lots of cars. One project I did was the Binsip tack trains that run on Superior. So here are the H4s that I did with the double bays. And again, it's Cricut cut styrene for the sides, for the slope sheets, but then like the bottom bolster is all 3D printed, and the rails and the ends are all 3D printed. So there's a couple of variations. And then just because I can, I did all the H1s as well. So I've got all 3 of the BN runs of the H1s. And again, all Cricut cut. And I run a 90-car unit train on my club layout. In fact, I've run it at Nationals in St. Louis. No, I'm sorry, in Kansas City. And runs quite well. That was where it debuted. But here's another one of the H1s with the open framing. So going from there, you can just about start building anything. One project I'm working on right now is something that's not getting commercially available, but it's the 60-foot high cubes for F-plate surface. And you notice there's no door on it because these are TTX boxes. So what I do is I actually make a separate door panel that I can paint black, and that way I don't have to use any masking tape. And then I also did these guys as well, which are produced by Walters, but when you're 3D printing, much easier just to produce yourself. And then being a Wisconsin model, Wisconsin Central, Green Bay, and Western, I do a lot of log trains. So here's my mega log haulers, which aren't produced by anybody, but it's an articulated log car. And I've got a lot of roll log flats that I did. So just to kind of give a viewpoint of different things are possible. Oops, forgot this guy. Here's a sand car. The side is Cricut cut. I even scored it with my Cricut cutter to get the ribs. And then, of course, everything else is 3D printed on the car. And you can see the detail with the rivets from 3D printing as well. So you kind of get best of both worlds. A nice smooth side with the styrene, and then the 3D printed parts for all the detail that'd be impossible to do with styrene. So at this point, what I'd like to do is I'm going to come here and share my screen. I've got a little bit of an outline for us. So Here we go. Speed, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you. So as we say, we're scratch building a car today. What we're going to be doing is actually making a Thou Many Papers pulp gun. So why 3D print? I think we talked about it. I actually have a IT degree. I did a lot of photography, a lot of 3D modeling, rendering, a lot of electronics classes. So 3D printers don't scare me. In fact, the 3D printers I have, I pretty much botched and built in Frankenstein myself. So that's how you get $1,000 printer to run like a $4,000 printer. But a couple of key concepts for us first. So subtractive versus additive manufacturing. So subtractive manufacturing is when you cut things, when you reduce the size of things in order to make something, like cutting styrene with a Cricut cutter. Where additive manufacturing is the 3D printing, where you're laying down filament and you are building something up. And of course, with this car, we're doing both subtractive and additive, taking the best of both worlds. But we need to be mindful that 3D printing is really not 3D. At best, it's 2.5D, because we build up in layers. It's like a hot glue gun that just builds up layer by layer by layer. And it's not true 3D. It's got a lot of limitations, and we got to be aware of that. Also, the materials. There's a lot of options for plastics to use, different techniques to use. I mean, I've been playing with this a lot, and I think the experimentation is very important. Anyone who wants to get into 3D printer, you can't see it like, buying a new screwdriver or a new file. It's a hobby within a hobby. It takes a while to really get the hang of it. And you just got to be willing to put the time in. Thank goodness we have YouTube. We have so many wonderful clinics. The 3D printing hobby is just as vibrant as the model railroading hobby, in my opinion. And there's so many wonderful YouTube presenters who are doing pure 3D printed projects. And I've watched a lot of that. But for me, as I'm designing, I've got a couple of rules that I follow. First is sunk cost fallacy, meaning I need to be flexible. I can't worry about how much this stuff is costing. A car costs 30, 50 cents worth of plastic. I can chuck a bunch of them. Who cares? I mean, we spend 50 cents, $1, $2 in gas all the time for no reason. Why can't I spend 50 cents, $1 in plastic and not be afraid to chuck it? 12 by 24 inch piece of styrene is less than $1. 3D printed filament, $30 a filament goes a whole long way. You can print tons and tons of cars. And so for me, I'm not married to, I have to have it perfect for printing. No, I'll print imperfect stuff and just keep going. It's not uncommon as I'm prototyping cars to make 3, 4, 5 prototypes and just keep refining and just keep printing parts. When I'm designing stuff, I'm just always printing what I'm working on so I can see it, and things always pop up. And that way I really have an iterative design, if you will. I can just keep improving. The other thing, this comes from my IT background, is the 80-20 rule. It takes 20% of the time to do 80% of the job. It takes the other 80% of the time to finish the 20%. I'm really running an 80% here on the job. I don't want to really get bogged down in great details and rivets. And yes, I do that on some of my projects, but a lot of these cars, they're going to be running on clubs, they're going to be running my layout. No one's really going to notice crazy details like that. And so I'm good with just the 80% of the job complete and making it look really, really nice. As I mentioned, iterative design. I'll start printing, and I'll just keep building up, keep refining. You'll see the car that I've prototyped already is my first prototype, and I'll explain some of the issues I have with it and what I'm going to do next. It's, like I said, multiple projects. And actually, I've learned this from Elon Musk and SpaceX, who do iterative design probably in the best manufacturing way I've seen. And there's a lot of interest in YouTube by some of their employees who really talk about that. Don't get bogged down. Don't get bogged down in details. Don't get bogged down in measurement. Just go. I'm okay with kind of guessing stuff. I can always change. I can always scale it. I can always modify it. But just keep moving. Just keep swimming. Keep having fun. My real life job is pretty tedious, so it's really nice to have a hobby where you can just have fun. For me, I would much rather play with crayons and number 2 pencils and slide rules. And so just have fun with it. But yet, I do have my standards, and my stuff is pretty exacting to my level, maybe more than others and less than others. Multiple projects at different times and folks. And what I mean by this, I have multiple projects going on all the time. Some when I feel brain dead, others when I feel I can do anything, and in between. And I have different workspaces where I'm working on my different projects. If you go downstairs in my basement, I have a couple of boxes with Ziploc bags marked for different projects I'm working on, things I put aside for certain ways and reasons. And when I feel like working on it again, I'll pick it up again. And then the 6-inch rule. Most people see our cars as 6 inches. At 6 inches, you're not going to notice a lot of things. This is not my job to make cars. These are for me and not others. And so I'm going to do what I like and think is good. And frankly, it's worked pretty well for sharing these things. So with that, what we're going to be doing the next 2 hours or hour and a half is following the steps I would follow to make a car. So first is study, collecting prototype pictures, getting dimensions, figuring out how to make the car, materials and tools that will be used, how I'm going to integrate car weights, operational constraints. It's got to run good. I'm a prototype operations guy with River Rail. It's got to run good. I run at clubs. Things got to be bomb-proof. Believe me, my club members are still teasing me about the run when I had in Kansas City with that ore train. It's got to run good. And then the KISS method, keep it simple. Keep it simple and keep my design simple. The best part is no part, as Elon Musk always says, and really try to refine and keep things best possible. And then modeling the basic car. And so we're going to create the sides for it. We're going to create some basic drawings and create a couple of 3D printed parts. And then definitely prototype and repeat. And not be afraid of that iterative design, refine and run the car, put trucks on it, put weights in it, run around for a couple of days, refine it again before I make my final run of it, if you will. So let's jump back to the front. Study. So prototype pictures. So the car we're going to be able to build today is from Thielme Papers in Kaukauna. And they made these special gondolas. It became international papers, and now they're all over the place. But you can see it's a very unique pulp gondola with those ends on it and the slopes, and it's got this little cutout window on it. Here they are in the UP in Wisconsin, Ismaning. I saw these all the time growing up. I was very happy to find an end picture of them. That is absolute gold, and of course of the brake end, which is even better. And someone made a resin model of it. And so I always like to look at and see if it was produced in brass. Brass models are a wonderful place to look. I love brasstrains.com, and I can look up all these brass cars, and not that I'm going to buy them, but I can look at all the pretty pictures and kind of get an idea of what the car looks like. Now, looking at this car here, there's a lot of deficiencies with it. They didn't really follow the ladder very well. The ribs are wrong. The window's not in the right place. Some of the understructure is a little bit different. So, I mean, it's a good representation. Again, for this modeler, I'm sure this is great. Resin, he's not doing 3D printing like I am, so I can have a bit higher standards. But as I look at his model, I'm noting what it is I need to be aware of in my prototype pictures. So then coming to that, I need to set dimensions. Now, unfortunately, I could not find dimensions for this car. And so what I'm left with then is relative measurements. So a lot of cars are photographed in trains, and they'll be next to cars I know dimensions. And my favorite thing to look for is bridge shots, because we can figure out what the length of a bridge is. And if you got a train car going over a bridge, you can figure it out pretty good. And luckily, I found this bridge shot. And it happened to be right next to a grain car. So I know that grain car is about 54 feet. I know the height of that grain car. I have many models of it. And when I, in Photoshop, put that train car underneath, I can say, wow, this looks like a 52.6 gondola. And that works very well. I've got a lot of WC Milgons. And so 52.6 fits all my log loads. Yeah, I want my car to be 52.6 so that I can interchange my log loads and make it work really well for operations. Is the car 52.6 exactly? I don't know. It looks like it's really close. It seems to be really close. But I wasn't quite sure after I found this picture. Now, as I said, it went over a bridge. As you can see, here's the bridge picture. This is an Ismaning. I wonder how long that bridge is. Well, if I go on to Google Maps, I can take a measurement off Google Maps. I can see that that bridge is roughly about 53 feet long. And when I went and put the car over the bridge, I'm like, my goodness, the car is just about the same length of that bridge. 52.6 is sounding pretty good to me. Next question, the height. So I calipered a grain car. And the grain car, if I kind of look at the ladders and stuff, it seems to be about 32 millimeter car. But I found another picture. This car next to an Algoma Central Milgon. And just happen chance, I've already 3D printed this Algoma Central Milgon. I know that that end on that Milgon is just over 32 millimeters. Now I model in millimeters because all my 3D printers run in millimeters. And so I just do everything in millimeters. But in fact, the whole industry does everything in millimeters because I've calipered so many cars from Atherton to Moulton and Skilled Trains. all the ribs, everything's in closest millimeter. Everything's in millimeters in our hobby, whether we know it or not. But anyway, these cars look to be about the same height, 32 millimeters. That height sounds very, very good to me. The other thing I found is I found a picture that had a BLNE coal car right next to it. And again, the coal car is 53.8 for length. I can find out it's 10'8". And basically when I match it up as a third check, yeah, it matched out. So I decided I'm going to make this car 32 millimeters tall, and I'm going to make it 52.6 feet long, which is 184 millimeters in HO scale. So what we've just done here, let me scroll back up, is we did our steady state prototype pictures, get dimensions, figure out how to make the car. So this is a question. So if I could switch back to my camera, gentlemen, I'm going to stop my share. And as we switch back to the camera here, this is my first prototype of the car.
Give us a minute.
I started this at 6 o'clock last night, and we had our River Rail call at 7 in Zoom. And I had this car ready to show people at 8:15 in the computer with the rendering. And this thing was produced by 11 o'clock that evening with all the parts printed for this prototype. So I basically spent 4 hours tops, plus was with my River Rail group on it. So that just shows how quick this rapid prototyping is. There are many issues with this car. I'm glad you can't see it clearly, but it gets me in the ballpark. So what we're going to do first is decide how we want to design this car. And what I did is I used styrene for the sides, and then I 3D printed rails, and I 3D printed the ends. On this prototype, I did a bottom bolster, and then I used a styrene sheet for the bottom. That is not happening next time. We'll explain later after we build the car. But for our purposes, what we need to do is start drawing the general dimensions of the car, the general outline of the car, so we can get our styrene sheet ready to go, and then we can start making our ribs. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to switch into one of my favorite programs in the whole world, which is Fusion 360. Fusion 360 is free for modelers, and it is what we call a parametric modeling software, which means you basically design off of blueprints. And what's really cool about Fusion 360 is I can actually import a canvas and import my railroad cars into the software. And so you can insert right here and attach a canvas. And then you can even size the canvas by putting a point on each corner and size it down. So I size this thing to 184 millimeters. Now, there is a great issue with this picture, as most pictures that people shoot of railroad cars, is it is not straight. Now, yes, I could have went into Photoshop and I could have edited and transformed it, but this end looks really good to me. And usually when I model, I mirror it. So I take the middle of the car and now just mirror over one side and make two, and then add my ladders and other details. So as long as I'm happy with this side, I can really do a whole lot with this. So now that I have this scaled properly, 184 millimeters tall, it does come out to 32 millimeters tall as well. So I know that my height-length ratio is perfect. There's my fourth check on the dimensions. I know I've got it really, really close. And if you've ever looked at a caliper with millimeters, which caliper is a modeler's best friend, right next to the sprue cutter and the super glue and methyl ether quinone, calipers, I mean, a millimeter, half millimeter, you're not going to see it at 6 inches. So even if I'm off by just a little bit, I don't care. It's close enough. Let's keep moving. So in Fusion 360, what we do to create things is you create a sketch, which is a blueprint, if you will. And from that blueprint, you can make your 3D parts by extruding, by giving them width and depth, if you will. So to create a sketch, and believe me, there's YouTube videos like crazy on this. Please watch them. There's a guy by the name of Lars who does a great job. Fusion 360 has all kinds of videos. But I come under here, I create sketch. I say where I want the sketch to be. I want it to be right here. And now I am drawing. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to create a box, a nice rectangle, and I'm just going to place it right here. If you notice that red line just came up, that is from what I've already done. And so we're kind of cheating just a little bit. But I'm just going to here. Notice I have dimensions on the top dimension here. It's already at 32. So I'm just going to type in 32. Now it's exact. Now what I do is 184 millimeters divided by 2. What I can just do, if I don't feel like doing math, I just do 184 divided by 2 in the computer. I hit enter, and now I have a nice box. You notice when I put my mouse over it, it shades in. Wonderful. Now what I need to do is set the top height of the gondola. And I'm just going to create a line here. And I'm just going to draw it. I'm just going to draw a nice straight line. There we go. Nice straight line. And now I want to make a nice dimension, because my 3D printers work in 0.4, 0.2 millimeter increments. So I want all my parts to kind of look good. But notice 19.202957, whatever. I'm just going to make it 19. 19 is a nice round number, nice and easy to remember. Now it'd be good to do this dimension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a line just for measuring purposes. So I'm going to draw this line over, and notice that that edge right there looks a whole lot like 20. So I'm just going to say 20, maybe 20.5. Enter. And you notice it gave me this nice little dot here. Then I'm going to draw another line on the other side and dimension that up, just so that I know exactly what I'm working with here. Now I'm looking at this, and it's looking 55.5 seems pretty good to me. Boom. All right, and then I'm just going to draw a line between them. And now I've got that dimension. Now, just so I can have one piece, I'm going to remove this line. If you hit the T key, it's called trimming. Notice when I put my mouse over, when I got the trim feature enabled, I hit go, and now I've got one piece. That's my basic dimension for the styrene, without a doubt. So to go from a drawing to an actual 3D printed piece, we need to do something called an extrude. Extrude is where you can push it back or up and create distance. The extrude hotkey is E for extrude, and now I can give it depth. Now I use 20 thou styrene, which is more like 0.024 inches, and I just know that 20 thou styrene is about 0.6 millimeters. So I'm going to type in 0.6 there. Notice how it's changed colors. I hit enter. I'm going to hide my canvas. And notice when I swing around, I now have a nice little piece right here. And as I said, I go from left to right. Well, there's a handy feature in Fusion 360 called Mirror. So I click on this body, and I go Create Mirror. It wants to say Objects. I've already selected my object. Select Mirror Plane. And I'm just going to select this edge right here. Notice it just pops it right over like that. And if I zoom out here, you'll notice I now have a piece with the two ends. In Fusion 360, you can easily combine and cut. Again, these are things to learn and to work on. I'm not going to explain it for this purpose, but just show you what it looks like. And now I have my piece. So now what I need to do is put this onto styrene. But rather what I'd like to do is show you the exact piece that I made earlier, because we didn't spend much time on this. But if I come here and I go to my side panel, you'll notice here's the piece I made. Looks very, very similar. In fact, we did pretty much almost an exact job, except I've got the hole cut out. So let's use this with the hole cut out. We'll do a Martha Stewart on this. So what I like to do, and this is because I've kind of grown building these things, you can export this as a drawing and put it into Cricut Cutter. I have found that to be fiddly. It loses lines. It has problems. I have found an easier Sharpie marker crayon kind of a way. What I do is I come and I take a screen grab. So in Mac, it's called Screenshot. I'm not sure how well you can see what I'm doing right now, but I am basically taking a screenshot of this image, of this pane, and I'm just going to save it to my clipboard. And I just hit capture, and I've got a screenshot of it. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop the share, and we're going to move into Photoshop. So let me move into Photoshop here. Sorry for all the transition for our moderators. Okay. So now I'm in Photoshop. I'm a photographer. I use Lightroom and Photoshop all the time for my photography. You can do this in Paint. You can do this with free programs. You don't need Photoshop for this. But I've got it. It's what I know. That's what we're doing. So I've saved it to the clipboard. I'm just going to Control V, and I'm going to paste my image in. Notice here is the image that we created. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use an online converter that takes a black and white image and traces it and makes it what we call an SVG file, a scalable vector graphic. This is the language that Cricut cutters love to speak in. I could go directly from Fusion to SVG, but as I said, I find it fiddly. I don't like it as much. So what I'm just going to do is I need to make this black and white. So I go to my paint bucket tool here. Boom. I've got a black and white image now. I just painted the gray black. Look how good it looks. Now I could use I could modify this. I could draw more lines. I use Photoshop all the time to make styrene sides. But it's easy to do Fusion 360 because I'm doing all my 3D printed parts in Fusion 360. So everything lines up perfectly every time. But when I was making the fully Cricut cut cars, it was all Photoshop. I was making all my puzzle pieces in Photoshop. So with that being done, I'm just going to save this. So file, save as, and we'll just call this side. And I'm going to put it as a JPEG image. Doesn't really matter what it is. I find JPEG just easy. And yeah, I didn't do it, but I don't care. I've already got it saved. All right, so I'm going to stop the share. Now I'm going to go to the online SVG editor. So I'm going to open up my Chrome. And oops, here we are sharing, and there we go. So here I am at this website. It's image.online-convert.com, convert to SVG. So online-convert. I found this thing 7 years ago. I've been using it ever since. It works phenomenal. And it takes an image file and makes it that scalable vector graphic that Cricut can speak. So I just come here and I hit choose file. I'm going to choose the side copy. I hit start conversion. It uploads, start conversion. This is a small file. It converts it. I hit download. And now in my downloads file, I have an SVG file, which is wonderful. I'm going to stop this share. And I'm going to go to my my Cricut Cutter program. Cricut Cutter, amazingly, now has a desktop application. But before I do this, I want to turn over to Speed and just ask if there are any questions about the Fusion 360 or anything I've done to this point.
Nothing so far, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Speed.
Nothing thus far.
Oh, nothing this far. How sad. Well, please type in questions if you have it, or maybe we've lost everybody. I hope you're drinking lots of coffee, Speed. So this is just an example of a complex project in Cricut Cut Design Space. This program comes with a Cricut Cutter, and you can see this is one of those Wisconsin Central rebuilds of the HMA org car, and you can see that I've got a whole bunch of internal structure here. I got internal ribs that slot together. I got the ends. I got handrails. I got ladders. I did it all in Cricut Cutter back in the day. And actually, I'm pretty proud of those cars, even though they don't look nearly as good as 3D printed. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to my projects. And there. And you can see you got all your projects loaded up. I got, just to show here, here's my bin SIF ones. Here's the sand car sides with the scoring. Here's the GBW Aura cars. Here's O-scale cars that I make for people. All kinds of stuff that I've done in the past. Here's the side cars, those coal cars I showed you. I cut decals out of white film. Here's some bolt parts as I was trying to make car ferries out of styrene. So you can do all kinds of stuff with this. But we're just going to do a new project. So I click on the new button, and here's my design space. So I want to be clear, I have changed Cricut Cutter over to metric. It's in centimeters. Just because everything I do is in metric, just as the whole model railroad manufacturing community is in metric. What we need to do is import my SVG file. So there's an upload button here. I click upload, I hit upload image, I hit browse, and I'm going to do my scalable vector graphic. Now, just as a caveat, Cricut Cut Design Space can make SVG files out of black and white JPEGs. It just doesn't work as well as an online converter. I have had problems with Cricut Cutter in the past doing it for me, just like I've had problems in the past with Fusion 360 exporting to an SVG file. It just loses stuff. The process I'm doing, it just works. Even though it seems like crayons, it works. So I'm going to click my side copy one SVG right here. It imports it. Notice I have a representation black-white. The online converter did a beautiful job. And I'm just going to hit save. And now I have that part right here. And I am just going to click on it and click insert image. So now it's going to insert it, but it has no idea how big to make it. Good news is we know. If I come up here to size, this is in millimeters. I guess 90 centimeters, so 900 millimeters. Way too much. It's 184 millimeters. I just do 18.4. You have no idea how many times I mess that up. Notice it switches it over to 3.214. It's 32 millimeters, but it's close enough. And I have my part right there ready to go, which is wonderful. Just for time issues, I'm going to hit Control Copy and Control V for paste. And I'm going to make a second one because why not? When you make multiple pieces in Cricut Cut, I always like to put them in the layout and orientation I want, which means you need to attach your files. And so if I just select both of them, I hit the shift key, clicked on the other one, and I just hit attach. Now it's one piece. I can move it as one. Cricut tries to help you. I swear this is made for the scrapbooking community, which it is, and it tries to make everything easy and assume what you want. It always gets me wrong. It doesn't know what I want. I'm not a more senior lady doing scrapbooking, I guess. I'm cutting model railroad parts, and I want full control. So that's why you always want to attach your parts. So with this done, now I can make it. So I hit the Make It button, and here we go. It gives me the Cricut Cut mat. So you buy these mats, it got sticky backing on them. My sticky backing wore out a long time ago. Styrene is very hard on this machine, although it's been running for 7 years and it's cut hundreds and hundreds of 12 by 24 inch sheets. I use the biggest mat possible, which is 30.5 by 61 centimeters or 12 by 24 inches. I've already cut on my styrene sheet, and I know that I need to move it down a bit. In fact, I need to move it down roughly 21 centimeters. So I'm just going to take this and drag it down to 21 centimeters and just a little bit more, just so I don't mess up on camera. We'll waste a little styrene. Oh well. Once I've got it set on the mat where I want my piece, notice I attached them so they move together. If I didn't attach, I'd have to move both pieces separately. And believe me, when you're cutting 50, 60 pieces at once, let the machine run for an hour, you want everything attached. When I got that, I hit continue. My Cricut Cut machine is a Cricut Cut Air. It's an old one. You can buy them on Craigslist like crazy. It's a Bluetooth. So right now, my machine is looking for the Bluetooth. And one hopes it finds it quickly. Sometimes it can take a minute. But it is looking. It just found it. And then you can set the material. Now, I have created what I call Tim's Styrene. This is the maximum pressure setting, and it makes 4 passes. I find making multiple passes makes my styrene parts pop out like butter. They just fall out. In fact, I can take the mat and just shake it, and all the parts fall out when I do this. But just for the purposes of this computer demonstration, I'm going to hit go, and now it's telling me nice, easy, clear instructions. I need to load the material, and then I press the go button. But with that, gentlemen, I want my camera back if possible, please, so you can see me. And I'm going to tilt my camera towards my Cricut Cutter machine. So right here, you can see I've got my mat. This mat is shot. The styrene does not stick to it. Who cares? I use frog tape or painter's tape to hold it on, the cheap Menard stuff, no problem at all. And I just tape the corners. There are rollers in the Cricut Cut machine that hold this tight. So as long as I got the top edge, I don't print too far to the top, we are good to go. You can see I've already cut some pieces, so that's why we moved it down. So all you got to do is put the sheet into the Cricut Cutter machine, and I hit the button that's flashing, which loads it in. You notice my head just moves back and forth. The blades for this are right here. So I use a deep cut blade. That's what you want to use, and it's just this little housing. And I can actually remove it right here. It's just magnetic. That holds it. I literally can cut 30 pieces of styrene on one deep cut blade as long as I do maximum pressure settings with 4 passes. It just keeps working. Look at this blade. It's starting to meet the end of its life. You can see it's really starting to wear down. These Cricut Cutter machines are not made to cut styrene, but they do. But the deep cut blade is the one you want to get. You have to get the special deep cut housing. When I bought this machine, the machine was about $150. A deep cut blade is about $3, and the housing's about $20. So I'm in about $200 on this machine. A mat costs about $10, and of course, you can buy this plastic online everywhere, 20,000 styrene for about $1 a sheet. My favorite place to buy styrene is East Street Plastics. It comes pre-cut, nicely packaged, super fast, but there's a lot of distributors for that. I'm just going to load that again. And there's a Cricut button, the go button is flashing for me, and I'm just going to hit go. And now it's going to sync up to my computer and start cutting. And so it does a little calibration. It moves down. Yeah, we are definitely wasting plastic right now, but I'm not making a fool of myself online, which is good. So this is just going to cut, and I'm just going to let this work to show you how quick it cuts 2 pieces. Speed, do we have any questions about what I've done thus far?
They want to know how much formal training or how long did it take you to learn Photoshop?
That is a great question. So I've been using Photoshop since 1996. I started with Photoshop 1.0. They no longer do number of versions. It got up to 12, and now it's the CS, the Creative Suite, and it's been that for a long time. Photoshop is not hard to use, but again, there's all sorts of wonderful tutorials. But for me, I always set a project and say, I want to do this project, and then learning the tools in the toolbox. But yeah, it takes a little bit. So for people who are not computer-oriented, this could be a bridge too far. I just am very comfortable with Photoshop. I'm very comfortable in 3D modeling. I'm very comfortable with building stuff by hand and working with styrene and the 3D printers. I have no problem using taps and dies and drill presses and soldering. None of this scares me. It doesn't scare me to resolder a resistor on a board with a reflow. I mean, we do this stuff. So I just want to say I've got a lot of the skills already in place to do this. But I think the Cricut Cutter is accessible by anybody. I have seen 80-year-old modelers who can barely check their email use a Cricut Cutter. And so it is possible. But 3D printing is where it gets a little more complicated. But if you put the time into it, it's good. It took me 2 years before I felt comfortable with 3D printing. I had a 4-month trial divorce on my 3D printer because I had never gotten so mad in my whole life. I kept breaking at everything I tried to do. But then after watching a lot of modeling 3D modelers, real 3D modelers, not railroaders, but just the 3D hobby, that's what got me more comfortable. And a lot of Fusion 360. I gave up watching any other TV, and all I did was watch 3D printing and Fusion 360 videos for like a year. And that really, really helped.
What thickness styrene are you cutting in 4 passes?
20 thou. This can cut 30 thou and score it very well, that you can just pop it out very easily, but I use all 20 thou. I do 10 and 15 thou as well, but that is getting really, really thin. 20 thou is just a really good thickness for car sides. And in fact, if you look, you can just see that it really isn't that thick, but it's just got a nice rigidity to it. And with the 3D printed part is 2.25 millimeters. And of course, the styrene 20 thou is 0.6 millimeters. But you can see just how nice that creates it.
Someone asked if the side posts on a gun are 6 inches thick, which is about 70 thou. How would you do that?
Oops.
What kind of blade?
It's my hobby. It's 6 foot. Who's going to see the difference between 0.6 millimeters and 0.7 millimeters? I mean, you're not going to see that ever. I mean, if I take my caliper right here and I do 0.1 millimeter, that is 0.1 millimeter right there. Who's going to notice? And so I just don't worry about that stuff. That's my crayon approach.
What kind of blade are you using there?
It is a deep cut blade from Cricut Cutter. It's the deep cut blade.
Are there pressure settings that you need to enter?
Yes, I have a custom profile where I set the maximum pressure and the 4 passes. And their Cricut Cutter has wonderful resources on their website with videos that show you how to do that.
And then, of course, everybody wants to know, are these files for sale? Are you making them available?
I have not made any of my files available just because when I've given files to people, there's a million questions, and I have a very busy job. I'm actually a Catholic priest by trade, and so I don't have time for all the customer support. I do have a buddy of mine who's looking at going in with me and maybe making these available. But I do make kits available, and I do pre-make the parts just because it's with my machines all calibrated and dialed in. It's very easy to do that. So I've sold hundreds of kits already on a lot of these cars to people in the local area in my clubs.
Okay, so when this is all done on YouTube, there's an order for you for one of the Car Ferry cars that you gave. So
yes, if you go to the River Rail website, I'm easy to get a hold of, riverrail.org. Otherwise, you can try Googling me and find me that way as well. But needless to say, I just got done cutting. And if you look here at the sheet, you can see that we've got the cutout. And so I can just come here. Oh, my blade is getting bad. Oh, my goodness. It didn't come out like butter that time. It did, but very old blade, but you can see that I got this piece. I can pop out the pop out right here. Yep, this blade needs to go. It is, I don't even know how many sheets I've done. Okay, so there's the part. Now, notice the limitations here. It's not perfectly square. It likes to round square edges. This is where 3D printing is more precise. But 3D printing doesn't give me the nice smooth surface finish unless I print in resin, which I have, but resin is messy, extremely time consuming, and costs about 15 times more for materials than FDM. So I avoid resin if I can. But that is the part that we made. It's nice and rigid and worked very, very well.
Could you put score lines on that?
What's that?
Could you put score lines on it?
Sure could. Now, if I were to do score lines, it's hard to run stuff twice through the Cricut cutter. It doesn't have really good registration. But what I'll do is I'll just print it a little lighter and won't cut all the way through the styrene, so I have to like pop out the pieces for the cut, and then the scores are better. So like in this example with the sand car, I cut at half the pressure, which means I had to be very careful popping the part out. But look at it, it's very easy cuts, for the styrene sheet. So it was really no big deal. So when I score, I just cut everything at half pressure with half the passes, and I can just pop out the part. Where when I'm cutting, it just comes out like butter. I can just shake it out and it comes out. Any other questions, Speed?
No, we can go on.
Okay. So what I'd like to do right now is prime the pump for the next hour. I guess this is a teaser to keep people engaged, hopefully. I'm going to go back to Fusion 360. Okay. So we're back in Fusion 360 now, and I just want to show you the power of this 3D modeling software. So we've made our side panel, but I've also made all the other parts because I've shown you the car. So I can put in my bottom bolster. I'm just enabling stuff, and there we go. And the side rails. I thought I put side rails on. There we go. Okay. So here you can see the finished car in Fusion 360, and you can see I did the side. So for instance, the brake is one side. Notice it's blue, and you can see that I've got the styrene sheet right here on the edge, and then I've got that 3D printed rail. You go up on top, you notice that you can see the styrene that I've modeled in, and then the rail. So I always model my styrene into my 3D workspace just because that helps me to know what I've got and what I'm actually working with. Also the bottom bolster, I put that in, and you can see the bottom styrene sheet that I've got there. I can tell you my next iteration, this will be printed. I'm not doing a separate piece. And my next iteration, I'm going to be embedding a car weight as well. But this just allows you to be very, very effective. If I notice the blue side rail piece is right there. So just to show you what we're looking at, I'm not going to go through, I just went back to my camera. If we could see my camera, please. I'm not going to go through the 3D manufacturing. We will do a 3D printed part in Fusion 360, and I'll show you my slicing software to get to talk to the 3D printer. But here would be an example of one of the rails that we made. So that was right off the 3D printer. It printed while I was sleeping. This took my machine about a half an hour to produce. So I can basically produce a car with an hour, hour and a half of 3D printing. I've got two machines downstairs. It goes extremely fast. And I can basically print, I've got a 16-inch by 16-inch bed. I can pretty much print probably 20 cars at a go if I really, really want to get going. But it takes about an hour and a half of printing. Here's that bottom bolster piece. And you can notice that I've got holes already in for my screws for both the trucks and the coupler. I've got the coupler pocket modded in there for Kadee couplers. And all these dimensions I've just got for like the heights and stuff because I've been doing this for so long. I just know what works well for Kadee heights. So if I got 33-inch wheels or 36-inch wheels, I've just kind of got that all dialed in. But in our next session, we are heading in the 3D printed direction. And I will show you basically how I made those rails a little bit, some of the basic concepts in Fusion 360, and how we go from there. If there's no question, Speed, I'm going to launch into that a little bit.
Hold on, you cannot go there until it's the hour. So,
okay.
An experience with the Silhouette cutter?
Yes. With the Cricut cutter?
No, the Silhouette, the competition.
Oh, Silhouette? No, I have not used a Silhouette. The reason I went with a Cricut versus Silhouette is the online reviews of model railroaders who were trying it like 7 years ago. Basically, were saying Cricut was much more expandable. At that time, Silhouette had a really hard time doing custom designs. Now it does a good job. They've all improved. There's also a cutter called Black Cat, I believe, which costs about $600. It's more professional, but that cuts styrene like mad. I've got a friend who has one of those. But I've found that the Cricut cutter works pretty well. Another issue with Cricut cutter is the blade is actually a swivel blade, and so there is no gear. So when it comes around a corner, it's going to swivel by just by the direction, which is why I get the soft corners. There are cutters that have a geared head that actually turn the blade so you get more precise and square edges. But here's the thing. Let me show you this. Here's a piece of styrene I cut. Notice that's a pretty square edge. You also notice there's a little ridge on top of this plastic. So it does, as it's cutting, it's like a little V that cuts into the plastic, and it does ridge that top edge. I actually like it because that little top lip is perfect for lining up my 3D printed rails and parts. I can just feel that and glue, and I've got a perfectly straight edge every time. So I use those ridges as my guides for my rails. And since it's so slight, so small, I really don't have to compensate for it when I'm making my parts, like subtract 0.1 millimeter. It really doesn't matter. But I like the ridging. And so I use those ridges to line up my rails all the time. And that way I don't have to keep looking always at levels at level or use my finger to feel if it's flush. No, that little lip there is perfect. So don't be afraid of a little ridge at the sleeves. Is actually really, really helpful.
But you could remove them if you like.
Of course, yeah. File or just piece of sand, yeah, be very, very easy. I did that at first, and I haven't done it since. I think for 6 years, I've never sanded my styrene. I actually do not have a file when I'm 3D printing and modeling. My parts come out so clean, I don't really need a file. And the styrene, well, you can't just put it on right from the cutter. I'm remodeling it. My 3D printed part doesn't fit without filing. I'm remodeling it. That's my policy.
Next question.
Yes.
Any experience with SketchUp or Tinkercad or another 3D generation software?
It's a great question. I've tried them all. There's also the Google product. There's a bunch of them out there. So if you go to the real 3D printing community, 3D printing as a hobby, they don't touch those programs like anything. They use programs like Fusion 360 or Blender or ZBrush. Those are Blender is more for making figures, animations, more sculpture, and so is ZBrush. But for Fusion 360, anybody doing like architectural parts and stuff, professionally or as a serious hobby, they're all Fusion 360. Tinkercad, SketchUp, all those things are easy to use, but they are extremely limited. Where Fusion 360 is a whole enchilada, the whole toolbox. It's amazing what it can do. And it's amazing how far it can scale. I mean, just to give you an example, I'm modeling the car ferries. Here's a car ferry deck wall that I'm making with all the rivets and stuff. I mean, all the details are in there, little ladders and stuff. Same software that I'm using to make simple styrene can do that. Another example, here's my 3D printed car deck with rails and stools and everything. This is a 40-inch part that Fusion 360 can easily make. So whether I'm making a 9-inch car or a 40-inch car ferry deck, it's all the same software. And so it takes a little bit longer to learn Fusion 360. The learning curve is a little bit longer, but it is worth it. It is so worth it. And I'm just very thankful. I played with Tinkercad and stuff, got very frustrated, and then I moved to Fusion 360, and I have not looked back for 6 years.
Are there any limitations in the hobby version?
There are, but I haven't found them yet. The only limitation that is affecting me right now, since I'm making models now with tens of thousands of rivets, is the paid version allows you to do cloud computing for larger renders and stuff, and the free version does not. But I'm just splitting up my files into littler files and getting away with that. But as far as anything that we might need, in my experience, no, it's fantastic.
Which Cricut cutter are you using?
I have the Cricut Air. It is the Air 1. I think they have Air 2 now. They also have the Cricut Maker. I think if I was buying the machine now, I'd probably get a Cricut Maker because that has a geared head where it can swivel it more. And that looks really, really cool. But I have a Cricut Air 1, and it was produced, 6-7 years ago. And I've been running the same thing. I haven't even changed the stepper motor of the belt yet. Everything's still running. It sounds like a dying cow half the time these days, but it just keeps running and is very precise. So I could not be happier with this little thing. And it comes with a really cute canvas carrying bag so that I can feel hip. It's really nice.
My wife bought a Joy with a smile on her face saying, "You can use this for N scale."
Then I've used 10,000 styrene. You have. I know so many railroaders who have bought Cricut cutters and their wives steal them and never see them again. That's happened to so many guys. And then they try to use their wives, and it's like World War III divorce coming up. Nope. So guys, buy your own Cricut cutter. Buy your own. It's better. Styrene is hard on them. We beat up the mats. I mean, you look at my mat here. It is filthy from all the shavings and stuff. Just get your own stuff. It's not that expensive. A $200 tool. And it is, I mean, you can cut buildings with this and then laminate with paper. It is so easy. I mean, the things you can do with this, and it's a 12 by 24 inch sheet. Man, that's huge for HO skill. I'm building auto plants with it and all kinds of stuff.
Do you prefer the knife blade to the regular small blade?
Oh, got to use a deep cut. The regular blade will not work. The regular blade has a lot shallower V, where the deep cut is a narrower V, and the regular blade cannot cut through styrene. It makes a big mess of it. It can do it with 10 thou, but 20 thou and 30 thou, forget it. The deep cut blade is what you want to use.
Dave wants to know about a comment on Facebook about sand car sides bending, how that works.
Okay. Actually, give me 1 second. Let me show you the interior of that sand car. I've got it just over in the other room. Just a sec.
And while Tim is away, we are going to take a break so that we can swap hosts at the end of the hour.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, very good. So here's the interior of that sand car. And you notice that I basically put a little 3D printed rib that's curved behind every cut rib. I over-designed it. But this is basically what the interior looks like. And then I created a little channel on the bottom here that the styrene actually fits into on the bottom. It just laps in there. And then the top piece that glues on also has that same ridge. And so I've got little ridges to receive the plastic that holds them nice and tight. And I just glue the car together with the styrene sides. And so that's how I did it. And I don't see the problem with 3D printing, it's really 2.5D. And so you're going to get ridging with FDM if you try to print this curve. And then trying to do the ribs and stuff, you get vibration, all kinds of artifacts. Where this is quick and easy. It takes 20 seconds to cut it, and it is so much nicer and makes for a really, really nice car. And then I can 3D print all the rails and ends, the top, do all the parts that are more complex. But anytime I can use Cricut Cutter, I do. It just
are you willing to share the setting for cutting that styrene?
Yes, I can, but the setting's very easy. Maximum pressure, 4 passes.
4 passes.
It's like 360 on their scale, 360, but it's a maximum pressure, 4 passes. Yeah.
And you say these techniques will work for N scale as well, right?
I would think so. The only issue might be is the Cricut Cutter does do rounded edges a little bit, so the smaller you go, I mean, you look at my little hole here, you can see it's not exactly square. So I think for N scale, as you get smaller and smaller, you might start running limitation of that size of the blade and the V and everything. But for HO, it's worked very, very well for me. I have made N scale cars. I have made N scale of these, and it did work. It did work with 10 thou styrene.
You could get the lines to go past the corner so that you come back and.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. You won't be able to use Photoshop and do the process I did to do that, but yes, you can do that by working in a SVG file and using Illustrator or something like that. You can just draw your lines past, and it will do that. Yep.
Okay, someone asked if you know about Serif's Affinity Photo and Designer.
No.
I think it's mentioned on the Model Railroad Hobbyist channel. Okay, last question before we close for the hour is, where can people buy those kits that you were bragging about?
Oh, I just kind of get them to my friends and stuff. I haven't done eBay or anything yet. It's still a hobby for me. But if you guys, that would be the easy way to contact me. I do have a YouTube channel, Tim Oudenhoven. You can contact me through that. Otherwise, my email is timoudenhoven@gmail.com. So you got my name right on the screen there. Just go at gmail.com and you can email me if you want as well. That'll work very well.
So it's easy. Become a friend on Tim.
Well, River Rail, Wisconsin Michigan Railroad Club. But yeah, I mean, it's just, at the train shows, guys will say, where did you get that car? See my H1s or H4s, and, it just kind of starts from there. They see the GBW cars, and where'd you get those? So that's kind of how I've sold stuff to this point, and just kind of, just making the kits available. But yeah, at this point, it's a hobby, and it funds my 3D printers and all my tools, and I'm good with that.
Cool. So thank you, Tim. We'll see you in a few seconds.
I look forward to it.
I just have to let Brooks in so he can take over. I'll see you guys a little later today.
Mm-hmm.